rated T to M. Hey, want to hear a PC Game Pass ad? I'll take your silence as a yes. Want new games on day one like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2? I thought so. How about unlocking all the League of Legends champions when you link your Riot Games account? All for one low monthly price? Well, guess what? We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Stalker 2 available November 20th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. And that's the end of the script.
We've got to win the United States Senate, and I'll give you my kind of punchline is we moved this weekend because I had really wanted to accommodate Dave McCormick, whose birthday's next weekend. We wanted him last year and couldn't get him because of his birthday. It's like, well, we'll move to this year. And it didn't dawn on me that like every state's state fair is this weekend. And so we don't have as many Senate candidates as I wanted to highlight, but we have the two best, most competitive races to highlight. And my next guest is one of those competitive Senate races. You have probably heard about Captain Sam Brown. He fought in Afghanistan. He was in Kandahar. He was wounded by an IED. He retired as a captain, moved back home. He and his wife started helping veterans. And he is one of the best recruits for the Senate. I know Senator McConnell and I will be talking about his race later to emphasize he's got just a heck of a personal story, but also the convictions to run for the United States Senate in a swing state that's been swinging more and more in our direction. But more than that, he's also got a heart for service, having served his country and now serving to help veterans and now to take that to the next level in the United States Senate. So it really is my pleasure. I like one of the people I really wanted to move heaven and earth to get in his campaign was so willing to reach out and say, yes, we can make this happen. So he's flown in from Nevada and we'll go home, but we've got him for the next 30 minutes. I can't wait to introduce you to Captain Sam Brown, the next United States Senator from Nevada. Thank you again for doing this. I know what the flight's like. I love the flight because it's 3.5 hours of no cell phone.
That's right.
So, look, you got even more stylish shoes. The man socks. God, that sucks. That's fine. So let's talk about your personal story first. You serve in Afghanistan, wounded in Kandahar, and retire as a captain. First of all, you're a West Point grad, correct?
That's right. Some of us chose West Point over the Naval Academy and Air Force Academy. Any Academy grads out here? None? All right, you guys are all smarter than me, I guess.
So how long were you in Afghanistan?
That's a good question. I'll put it to you this way. Anyone familiar with U.S. Army Ranger School, based right here out of the great state of Georgia?
Yes.
All right. So I recycled one of the phases, which meant I spent like roughly 80 days in Ranger School, which meant I was in Afghanistan just short of that. It was really early into my deployment. And, Eric, the thing that was tough, there's multiple things that was tough about getting wounded. But one of them is, if you go back in my history, I was raised by parents that instilled in me at a very early age, and I'm not joking. My father literally ordered the West Point academic catalog when I was 10 years old. This is before emails and stuff. I mean, he wrote to the West Point admissions office and said, can you please send a catalog? And I went and checked the mail, and I saw it, and I didn't know what it was. I had to wait for him to get home from work, and I asked him, I said, Father, what is this? Because there was pictures of these castle-like buildings and young people in these Civil War era-looking uniforms. And he said, son, that's West Point. You could go there one day. And so that seed was planted at a very young age, and it was, and it was nurtured. And so as I, approached my senior year in high school, I had already applied. I was committed to going to a service academy. I didn't apply to any civilian schools at all. And then our country was attacked on 9/11. A few short months later, I got my acceptance letter to West Point. Less than a year after 9/11, I'm raising my right hand for the first time in service to this country on the banks of the Hudson River. And so I had spent my entire adolescent life, 4 years at West Point, a year at Fort Benning, a year at Fort Hood, Texas, training with my battalion to go lead troops in combat overseas for this nation and to have all of that at 24 years old go up in smoke. I lost at that moment my professional identity and my personal identity because I was no longer recognizable. And that was one of the toughest things in the world, was to have been committed to a life of service. And the only way that I knew what it could look like was in uniform. And to have that just go away. And I'm blessed, though, that in the midst of that period, that time of suffering, to have, well, I didn't find her, she found me, but my wife met me when I was in the ICU. Amy was in the Army as well. She worked in the ICU as a dietitian. She saw me when I was intubated, wrapped head to toe in gauze, and I met her a couple months later. But what Amy and I are doing is a mission together, which is serving this country again. And this is an act of service from both of us. But I wouldn't be here without her.
I'm sitting here thinking, God, your dad got you a West Point catalog at 10. I got my son a Lego catalog. I'm like learning. This is I don't know how my parenting skills are.
If it makes you feel any better, I have not got my children a West Point catalog.
So you talk about this mission in Blessed, and we've just met, and so can I ask you the probative question that I normally don't meet to people I meet immediately, but using the language I'm hearing you use, can you talk about your recovery and your faith in that?
Absolutely. Look, the moment that bomb went off, and it went off under our Humvee right at the fuel tank, and so I was soaked in diesel fuel. The diesel fuel was burning off of my body. And when that happened, it was the first time in my life, again, I was a young man, I was 24, but at that point, I believed I was invincible, and I believed I knew everything. And so at 24, to now encounter something that I knew in a moment was bigger than me, I couldn't overcome on my own, it humbled me, it crushed me to a point where the only response I had was to throw my arms in the air and scream out for my God and my Creator. After that, I tried to stop, drop, and roll. It wasn't working. My face was on fire. I couldn't see anything. The only thing I could hear was my own voice screaming. And you can't manufacture that scream. It's a sickening sound to hear a man who believes he's about to die screaming for God and for his mom. And I got to this place where I realized I had no ability to control an outcome, even an outcome of saving my own life. And so I thought, how long is it going to take to burn to death? What's the transition from this life to the next going to be like? And I made the decision to give up the will to live. A version of me died at that moment. Death was going to be a relief. And then I heard the most powerful words I've ever heard, and it didn't come from a historical figure. It didn't come from one of my, commanding officers or a general or even a sergeant major. It came from my E4 gunner, a guy who'd just been in the truck with me. He'd been burned himself, got it out, and he ran to me and he said, "Sir, I've got you." And the miracle of that moment was when I went from a place of having given up the will to live to just by hearing those words and feeling his body and the dirt smothering me, I knew I was going to survive. And hope was reignited. And what's important here as a lesson for all of us is, no one here knows anybody in DC, right? How often do people use their words to try and encourage us or to deliver hope, and there's no action? Words without action are meaningless when someone is desperate. Now, if someone's just having a little bit of a bad day, words might be enough. But when someone believes that their life, either literally or metaphorically, could end, they need more than words. They need action. And that's what I discovered that day at 24 years old. And it came from a young man from South Texas who was in my truck, who put himself in harm's way, had already been wounded himself, and he taught me the greatest lesson of my life. And so through the next 3 years of my recovery, I had no doubt that I was here for a reason. And I've been on this journey for the last almost 16 years of trying to discover, from day to day, month to month, year to year, what is that purpose? And eventually it became to be the best husband I could be to Amy, to be the best father I can be to my 3 children, to admit that West Point does a lot to teach you about leadership, but it doesn't teach you a lot about the fundamentals of business. So I had to go back to school and get my MBA. And then to start a business that serves veterans, to fill a need that the VA couldn't do. And I mean, look, the VA, anyone ever heard any criticism of the VA here? Look, I'm going to tell you the truth. I've gone to the VA consistently since I was medically retired because I knew people were going to ask me, Sam, what's the VA like? And if I didn't participate, even though I had other options, then I would either have no credibility in my response, or I would just have to say, I don't know. So I've always used the VA, but the VA is an imperfect system. And so our business filled that need when veterans needed medication same day through a clinic that didn't have pharmaceutical support on site. We were there, fill that gap. And I loved serving the community that way. But ultimately, service to country, that call came again. Not in uniform, not through my business, but through politics.
So let's talk about this race now. I mean, you made it through Afghanistan and recovery, and you really want to go to the United States Senate?
Well, no, those are your words. I'm not sure you'll find me in an interview anywhere saying I want to go to the United States Senate. I mean, let's be clear. I've got a great life, a successful business with a great marriage, healthy children, and a place where, look, I was skiing 20 days a year. We live 45 minutes from Lake Tahoe. I mean, this is a great life I've got. So I am willing to serve in the United States Senate. And my wife would tell me, in fact, this is what she did tell me as I was wrestling with this. She said, Sam, we're all given talents. We're all gifted with something. Are you maximizing the stewardship of your talents as a business owner, or would you be maximizing your talents as a U.S. Senator? And when I thought about that, when I had to pray about that, and I looked deep within myself, I realized that the selfish version of me wanted nothing to do with it. But the part of me that God created me in my own unique way and with the experiences I've had in life, that was the best stewardship of my talents.
Let's talk about the raw politics of this moment, because there was a Senate race in 2022 and a governor's race statewide in Nevada. Notice I'm saying Nevada. I learned it's Nevada, not Nevada.
Well done.
We lost that Senate race. We did win the governor's race. And so now 2 years later, we're now in a presidential cycle, which has higher turnout. I would note that the incumbent Democrat doesn't poll very well for being an incumbent Democrat, well below 50%. But how do you look at this race compared to 2022 that says this year is a viable race?
Yeah, look, that's a fair question. And, I go back and I lean on, the basic education and training I received at West Point. When we study battles in military history, we don't just study the battles we win and say, all right, when we're in this situation, here's the game plan, here's how we're going to execute and get another win. You study the losses as well. And so that's what I did last cycle. And so you actually have this incredible sort of laboratory of 2 experiments going on simultaneously in almost identical conditions. And you can sort of test and hold some of the different functions against one another. And what I discovered is that the campaigns ran slightly different strategies. In the Senate race, the team there appeared to believe that pushing for a strong Republican-based turnout in the general election was the key to victory. In the governor's race, not that they ignored it, because they tended to those relationships some, but they pushed into the middle for independence and went and pursued getting that buy-in, getting that commitment of a vote. And at the end of the day, I believe that difference in strategy is what led to a difference in those results. And so how do I apply that forward? Well, it helps to come out of a primary with a landslide victory. I mean, I won 60% of the vote in a field of 12. The next closest person was 45 points behind me. So we've got a really unified base now. And President Trump has made Nevada a real target for his battleground plans. And it helps to have, his voice saying, Nevada is important, but Sam Brown is important too. And so now I'm able to focus on those voters who might not identify as a Republican. In fact, I'll put it to you this way. I'll tell you what our voter registration looks like. There's only 18,000 registered voter difference between Republicans and Democrats, 30-30. That means 40% are in the middle. 40%. So shouldn't we focus on pursuing those people? 30% of our residents are Hispanic voters. We've got incredible communities of Asian Americans, conservative family values. The Republicans have never pursued a relationship with. We've got union workers who are really disaffected by this Biden economy. Prices are up. In fact, the economy is the number one issue for our independent voters. 36% say that's their number one issue. When median household income is $64,000, but median home prices are over $400,000 in Vegas market and over $500,000 in the Reno market, there are people who are worried about Pavlov's hierarchy of needs. Do we have a roof over our head, food on the table, gas in the car, and there's a lot of people that are scared. That's not going to be there for them.
Let's talk about those issues, because I was out there just a couple of weeks ago with a buddy of mine, and I got recognized by one of the people at the casino we were staying at, and he was talking about that particular issue, that the economy forget you got Reno, Carson City, you got Lake Tahoe, you have Vegas as such the major population hub, and he's like, we're having conferences and not seeing as many people come. We're not seeing as many people in the local restaurants. To the extent people are coming, they don't venture out as much, they don't spend as much in the casinos, and I got to imagine that all of that just causes an economic spillover effect to the local businesses, the restaurants, the used car dealer lots.
Yeah, it does. In fact, we've got the second highest unemployment rate in the nation. Compounding the economic stresses, we have the second highest energy costs in the nation. Our at-home utility bills, because we've got this, this pursuit of these mandates on renewable energy goals and power production, doubled in 18 months. It actually doubled in 12 months, but it started 18 months ago. And so people who are living paycheck to paycheck, a lot of people living on tips, by the way, and President Trump's pledge to eliminate taxes on tips matters a lot in a state like Nevada. And I know it matters in other places too, but it matters so much. There's only 2 Democrat senators who have signed on to Ted Cruz's bill to eliminate taxes on tips. And they're the 2 Democrat senators from Nevada. But only after they both criticized it. And went as far as Jackie Rosen, my opponent, actually, her statement went so far as to say, this policy is going to hurt working class Nevadans. If someone can explain that to me, I'll be right off stage here in a little bit, and I'd love to know how that works. But look, they heard from the people, and the people said, "This we want this. This is ludicrous. Your denial of that is actually going to hurt us," and so they've reversed course. Another thing that President Trump has just recently said, and I think, look, In my view, the government taxes us too much. But if someone has gotten to a place in their life where they are earning their Social Security back, why are we paying taxes on that? It never should have been taxed in the first place. It was literally taxed to begin with. And so we have many, many retirees in Nevada. These are issues that affect people's major concerns. Eric, one more little story. One of my neighbors, and I knew her well before I got into, running for office. She stopped me about 2 years ago and said, one day we were in our driveways, and she said, "Hey, Sam, I just want to let you know that if you notice things happening around the house, in other words, if someone's messing with my stuff, between these hours, just know that I'm not home." And I said, "Shirley, what's going on?" She said, "Sam, I had to go back to work. I was living off Social Security and a reverse mortgage, and things got too expensive. I can't make ends meet anymore. I had to go back to work." And so, on days when I'm catching a flight, I've got to be to the airport at, 5 a.m., I see Shirley with her garage door open, and she's getting ready to go to work at 4:30 in the morning, because things have gotten so expensive that even though she did the right things and she has Social Security and she went, dug a little deeper and reverse mortgaged her home, it's not enough. And people need relief. They need leaders who understand the issues. And it's not just a matter of the words. You have to have action to provide hope.
One of the other issues that I would imagine affects Nevada, and it's one of those weird ones where I hear Democrats all the time say we have to have the illegal aliens to pick the crops and do the work that others don't want to do. But I got to imagine illegal immigration in Nevada is a big issue.
It is a big issue. But even more broadly speaking, the border is a big issue. Because it's not just a matter of illegal immigration. It's the things that happen when you have a border policy that is effectively open. Fentanyl has killed more people than warfare has. We're losing 100,000 Americans a year, and it's agnostic of race, creed, community. It's terrorizing our state. The sheriffs tell me that their number one, and I talked to them and said, and initially I thought it's going to be some, kind of localized issue or something like, it's like, what's your number one concern? It's the border. It's the border. You've got human trafficking, you've got the drugs, you've got, people who are coming into our country, and our systems, whether it's healthcare system, education system, just housing supply, isn't there to be able to hold it. And we're not even getting into like the terrorists who are coming into this country. So yeah, that's the number two issue for our voters.
It's interesting to me. Every time I ask someone, regardless of what they're running for, in whatever state they're running in, what the big issue is, people bring up the border, which I kind of expect, but fentanyl because of the border, that it affects that many people in that many states. It's remarkable to me.
It's a tragedy.
Now, on the practical aspect of running for office in Nevada, you've got, you do have this population center in Las Vegas, and it seems like you've got to turn out Clark County. But how do you, in a state like Nevada, maximize, like I know the Laxalt campaign and others, they wanted to rely on Republican turnout in the rest of the state, but what do you do strategically as a campaign to make sure you're maximizing your turnout there?
We're talking about with kind of the new voters we're going after.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of it is trying to build relationships with people who you haven't had a relationship with before. And so I talked about, for example, the 30% of our residents out there who are Hispanic. We started running ads in Spanish a couple of months ago. This is something that otherwise had been happening like basically, after a Labor Day type thing. And I think, look, it's a natural human response that if somebody cares about us and they want to build a relationship, they're going to engage with us over time. The first time somebody comes to you and asks you for something, and there's not a relationship established, there's not credibility, there's not rapport, it can be off-putting. And that's what we have been doing politically to folks that we hope, want, or need to vote for us. So we've been running ads in Spanish, we've been running ads in English as well, but we're pursuing those relationships early. And we also, we have kind of a climate of, I can't win this alone. I can't win this. Sam Brown can't win the Senate race alone. It takes voters, it takes donors, it takes volunteers, and frankly, it takes a coalition of others that care about the Nevada Senate race from around the country to get there, whether in person or through resources, to invest in it, because it's worth investing in. And we're seeing that. We're seeing organizations, people, whether it's small dollar donors or big enterprises, they believe in Nevada, they believe in this race, and that's how we win.
Now, one of the issues, of course, is your opponent, who has been pretty much in lockstep with Biden and Harris along the way, voting on all the packages that even Larry Summers said would drive up inflation. It seems more and more that there isn't, we've mentioned the economy, we've mentioned the border and immigration, that the fact that her polling, she can't get above 50% seems like this is a ripe opportunity and a viable pickup seat.
It's incredibly viable. And there's people who've studied campaigns and politics longer than me that could probably give really eloquent responses to this. I'll tell you this. Here's how I feel about it. I've got guarded optimism. And what I mean by that is the conditions are there for us to win. I'm not buried with terrible unfavorables and coming out of a hole. In fact, my favorables and unfavorables are basically in a dead even, despite the fact that Schumer's PACs and Rosen's campaign money has been spending millions of dollars to try and negatively define me. They can't put me underwater. And we've got resources coming. I say there's three things that have to come together in these tough battleground races. You have to have the right candidate with the right resources and right strategy. And I believe we have all three of those elements. But what we can't do is try and surf a wave and expect other things to, other conditions to lead to a win. I've seen, cases where people have let off the throttle, 2 months out, like, oh, hey, polls look great, we're going to win this thing, and coast through. No, this campaign is going to be run like we're 5 points behind, regardless of what the polls say, all the way through November 5th.
So people here in the room want to be able to support the campaign from where they are. What should they be thinking about doing? Where should they go on the internet?
Yeah, people can go to my website. It's a great place to start, CaptainSamBrown.com. And people, look, if you live in Nevada, I want your vote. If you don't live in Nevada, there's ways to either contribute, through money through the campaign website, but technology allows people to even volunteer. Not everyone can give money, I understand that. But to those who can, please contribute directly to the campaign. And otherwise, people can make phone calls. You can virtually help out the campaign in other ways. And when we have such high stakes this election cycle and so few opportunities to win battleground Senate seats, to take back the majority, we need the country to mobilize around those races and really help us to win, even if it's from afar.
Now, last thing for you. We've talked about the economy and the issues, but in my sense of things, and having done this for a while, everybody who goes to Congress actually does have something that is their passion, that I get there, this is the thing I want to do if I get to the Senate or the House. What's yours?
I want to tackle the financial hardship thing first, because that's where I see the most concern out of my voters. People are scared. They are legitimately scared. When you have homeless numbers are up, and I guarantee you, within this room, probably everybody knows somebody who's now homeless who 5 years ago wasn't. You might not know it. They might be sleeping at someone else's home, a relative. They might even be sleeping in their car, but taking showers at the gym. But people are scared. And so, the things that I can do, whether it's extending tax cuts, pursuing vigorously American energy security to help bring down prices. If it's getting bureaucracy out of the way that tangles up and puts friction on small businesses, these are things that we can start pursuing on day one. Making sure that we secure the border so we're not dealing with this influx of people who are just taking jobs, who are flooding our healthcare system, our education. Like these are the issues that we can start to tackle on day one that are my number one concern, because that's my constituents' number one concern.
Captain Sam Brown, thank you for making the trip from Nevada all the way out here to hang out with us. Best of luck on the campaign. Thank you for your service, and I hope you get to serve a long time in the Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you a ton for doing this. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
God bless.
Thanks, you too.